everyone, and thank you for tuning into my channel. I am Tristan Gabriel, and I have two very special guests with me in this debate that's going to take place on the proposition, is the basis of morality subjective? And Daniel, Objective Ethics, is going to go ahead and take Tom is going to take the affirmative, I believe, and you're going to describe whether or not morality is objective or subjective in your opinion. But anyways, I don't want to go ahead and introduce you guys, so I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Tom, why don't you go ahead and go first, and then Daniel after.
Hello, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this evening, the organizers for doing this. Tristan, obviously, for taking the time out to organize and put this on your channel. Definitely appreciate it. My name is Tom. I'm an atheist. What they call a cradle atheist, so lifelong. We're gonna have some fun tonight with objective morality here that says that ethics and morality are indeed objective and not subjective. So it should be fun, and I hope that I'll bring my A game for all you guys. Thanks.
Perfect. Go ahead, Daniel.
That was a great introduction. Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, I'd like to also say the same thing, that I really appreciate Tristan for taking time out of his day to do this. If you guys haven't subscribed already to Tristan's channel, I highly recommend doing that. Please like the video, post your comments about the debate after the video to help with the algorithm. I'd like to acknowledge my opponent, Tom, who is an intelligent, well-spoken interlocutor. I would like to thank him in advance for being a worthy opponent who will not only challenge me in my abilities in formal debate, but will also be participating in what is sure to be an intellectually stimulating battle of minds.
Perfect. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and let the affirmative plead their case. Tom, you'll go ahead and go first, and I believe you have 10 minutes. And then we'll go ahead and go from there. So, Tom, have your liberty. I'll go ahead and set the timer in 3, 2, and 1. Is morality subjective?
All right. Let's start from the ground up here. Tonight's question: whether morality is subjective or objective, something that exists independently of us, or whether it's subjective, a human creation. I'm here to argue unapologetically this evening that morality is ours. It's invented, evolved, felt, fought over, and rewritten by human beings, not discovered like gravity, not handed down like commandments. It's a negotiation between our instincts, our cultures, and our circumstances. Morality isn't a universal law. It's a human language. And like every language, it changes, adapts, and reflects the people who speak it. The idea of an objective morality, that there are moral facts baked into the universe, sounds comforting. People want to believe that behind all the chaos and disagreement, there's a cosmic referee keeping score of sorts, saying this is right and that's wrong. But essentially, this is wishful thinking. You can't point to a morality anywhere in nature. The universe doesn't hand out gold stars for kindness or punish cruelty. The same physical laws apply either way. The universe isn't moral, it's amoral. The only morality that exists is the morality that we project onto it. And that's actually beautiful. Morality reflects our empathy, our fears, creativity. It's built from within, not imposed from above. Now, what does objective even mean here? Objective means independent of human opinion. 2 + 2 = 4. That's objective. The speed of light is objective. But murder is wrong is not describing a property of the universe. It's expressing a value judgment. You can't weigh wrongness or calculate it. You can only feel it, argue it, try to justify it. All human acts, basically. Objectivity belongs to facts. Morality belongs to values. They are not the same. People often say, well, if morality is subjective, anything goes. No, it means we decide collectively, imperfectly, passionately, sometimes violently. Morality evolves with us. History makes this clear. Slavery, women's rights, war, sexuality, animal rights, all these were moral revolutions. If morality were objective, fixed, eternal, none of these shifts would ever happen. Yet they did. Today, moral norms are wildly different. Some cultures see arranged marriage as virtuous, others as oppression. Some call euthanasia mercy, others murder. Which is objectively correct? None. Morality is a product of context, culture, and environment. Evolution also shaped our morality. Humans are moral animals because morality helped us survive. Empathy and cooperation were survival strategies. Tribes that punished murder and theft lasted longer. Morality is emotional software adapted for group cohesion. Like any software, it has bugs, updates, and occasional crashes. Anyone defending objective morality faces an impossible task. Where does this morality exist without human minds? Without God, natural law is unreliable. Nature is full of killing, theft, domination. Modern secular objectivists appeal to well-being or flourishing. But notice what that is. It's a value choice. Maximizing well-being is good because we agree it is, not because it's written into reality. Science can show what causes suffering, but it can't tell us what we ought to value. This is the sleight of hand that moral objectivists, they have defined morality in measurable terms, then pretend this makes ethics objective. But whether reducing harm is good remains a human decision. You can't get an ought from an is, we know that. It's Hume's guillotine. Facts describe reality. They don't prescribe behavior. Killing causes suffering. Calling it wrong is a human judgment, not a universal law. Even our strongest moral convictions, freedom, equality, justice, are products of perspective. They exist because humans fought and imagined them into being. The universe didn't have a hand in justice, we built it. And that's why progress is possible. Morality evolves because it's ours to shape. If it were truly objective, progress would be impossible. Truth doesn't evolve, but morality does. Morality also feels objective because our brains make it so. Guilt, shame, and empathy evolved to enforce cooperation. They create a sense of moral authority even without cosmic oversight. Deep down, people don't know right from wrong. They know what feels right to them. And that feeling is what shaped evolution, culture, and guide moral systems. Historical examples demonstrate morality's human roots. Romans threw prisoners to lions. The church burned dissenters. Societies enslaved and oppressed. Modern nations debated same-sex marriage. Each generation believes in its own moral truth, but these truths shift because they're human constructs. Context determines morality, not cosmic law, not some cosmic arbiter either. Even so-called moral facts rely on our psychology. Every culture condemns murder within its group, but outside that circle, rules do vary. Spartans abandoned infants. Aztecs performed human sacrifice. Modern nations justify drone attacks as collateral damage. That's evolved tribal psychology, not objectivity. Our moral intuitions are adaptive, hacks for survival. Guilt, shame, compassion, and outrage help tribes cooperate and pass on genes. Objectivists, even atheists, like my partner here, often smuggle in theological assumptions. They discard God, but retain moral authority, calling moral reality. Moral facts like torturing babies is wrong derive from empathy, not a property of the universe. A planet of beings who enjoy suffering would see the same act as sacred. Morality depends on the sentient evaluator, not a universal truth. So subjectivity basically doesn't create chaos. We act morally because empathy, cooperation, and antisocial norms are effective. Music and beauty are subjective yet powerful. Morality is the same, grounded in experience, deeply meaningful, and effective at guiding action. We can condemn atrocities without cosmic oversight. Human consciousness suffices for this. So why does morality feel objective? Evolution designed it that way is a simple answer. Moral emotions compel us to act consistently, just as hunger compels us to eat. Morality is a language. Cultures develop moral dialects based on shared biological grammar, empathy, fairness, reciprocity. No universal cosmic English exists, only overlapping moral systems. Humans didn't evolve to discover moral facts. We evolved to survive. That's the biggest difference. Morality is an adaptive fiction, useful but not really objectively real. You won't find moral truths under a microscope. They're in our heads, but that doesn't make them meaningless. It makes them ours. So, a challenge for objectivists. Show me a moral statement, true of independent of all minds. Murder is wrong. Without sentient beings, it's meaningless. Where does your objective fact live? In math, atoms, or Plato's heaven? Until then, you're asserting oughts into a world of ises. In short, morality is a human invention, necessary, beautiful, and evolving, but still an invention. It's a social software of empathy, reason, and survival. That doesn't lessen its value, it makes it more precious and more human. I defend moral subjectivity because it acknowledges responsibility. Values are made, negotiated, and refined. Morality doesn't need to be an objective to matter, it just needs to be ours. Thank you.
All right. Well, you still have 1 minute and 50 seconds left. Do you want to go ahead and take it, or we can close it off here?
We can close it off. All good. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so very much. I can tell already this is going to be a very interesting debate. Daniel, you're going to go ahead and respond to his affirmative. And goodness, this is already fire. So Daniel, go ahead and have your liberty. I believe you have 5 minutes to respond to this. And then you'll be taking your 10 minutes, I believe, right after. Is that correct?
You want me to do the response next?
Okay, yeah, that's right. You do the response next. So go ahead. You can have your.
I think he has his opening statement first.
Yeah, you could have your opening statement. Okay, go ahead. 10 minutes in 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead.
Okay, so I guess I should have said in my opening statement, I forgot to introduce myself as I'm Objective Ethics, Daniel Leroy. I am an agnostic, so this is kind of going to be an interesting battle between two skeptics here, Tom the atheist and myself the agnostic. So he already did a great job of covering the definitions of morality, subjective and objective. I just want to make sure we're clear on something, though. Morality is a set of principles or values that determine right from wrong or good from bad. This is exclusively relative to the human condition. So morality is not a word that applies to nature. It doesn't apply to animals. It doesn't apply to a lot of things because specifically the definition of morality applies only to the human condition. Subjective, stance dependent, or personal opinion. Objective is going to be stance independent or mind independent. So let's talk about logic. The three primary rules of logic are objectively true. Number one is the law of identification. A is A. Number two is going to be the law of non-contradiction. P not P, so the proposition or not the proposition. And the third law of logic is P is either true or false. The proposition must be either true or false. These laws are objective. We can make subjective claims that are logically true, but anything that is objectively true must necessarily be logically true. Anything that is true cannot be false, and vice versa. The reason that morality must be objective is based on these very demonstrable laws of logic. Subjective morality leads to logical contradictions and thus must necessarily be false. If we know that morality exists and we can prove that subjective morality is false, then objective morality provides the only remaining explanation according to the laws of logic. Morality cannot be both objective and subjective at the same time because they cannot both be subjective and not subjective at the same time. The causal link that leads from morality to human flourishing is simplified by the statements, morals are universal propositions, which are a necessary precondition of cooperation, and cooperation is a natural law that leads to human flourishing, which is guided by the natural laws of evolution, and all natural laws must follow the laws of logic and are true, independent of any minds. A formal argument can be formed. Premise 1, things that are objectively true are logically true. Premise 2, logic is the grounding of all morality. Premise 3, if morality is subjective, then it can lead to logical contradictions. Premise 4, all logical contradictions are necessarily false. This leads us to the conclusion that because all morals are ultimately grounded in logic, then they are objectively true or false. Let's look for some examples of how subjective morality leads to contradictions. If the slave master thinks slavery is moral, and the slave thinks slavery is not moral, then you have a logical contradiction. The slave and slave master cannot both be right. If the man who commits murder thinks it is morally justified to murder someone, then this inherently infers that the murderer values his own life, and thus he necessarily sees the inherent and moral value of life. And thus, the claim that taking away the life of another person is morally justified is a logical contradiction. If morality is subjective, that would necessarily mean that it can be both right and wrong to commit murder based on the stance of the observer. This leads to a logical contradiction as murder cannot be both moral and immoral at the same time. Any immoral action must be universally immoral, or it leads to a possible contradiction. If subjective morality leads to a contradiction, then it must be objective in order to avoid any logical contradictions. If morality is objective, then it must be universally objective. All objective truths are grounded in logic. All logical truths are universally true. There are so many different ways that we could come about understanding this concept. So let's look at another argument. All declarative propositions are necessarily true or false. That's the third law of logic we talked about. If all moral claims are declarative propositions, then they are factually true or false. All claims about objective morality are declarative propositions. All subjective claims about morality can lead to contradictions. Therefore, all true moral facts are necessarily objective. One of the things that was mentioned, I think, is very interesting about evolution, but I guess I can get at that in my response to Tom. So go ahead, we can go from there. I'll concede the rest of my time.
I'm sorry. I just got back. I didn't hear a word of pretty much all of it. I'm so sorry. I got booted as soon as you started talking. I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened. I didn't touch anything, and all of a sudden you were out.
I didn't touch anything either. I just as soon as Daniel started talking, I got booted.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't touch anything.
I believe you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're back on.
Can we just start with Daniel's time again? Because I'm sorry, I didn't really hear anything of what she said.
Okay, so even though you were booted out, I did see you in the comments section. So you didn't hear anything that he said?
Not a word.
Okay, Daniel. Yeah, unfortunately, this happened. I didn't want to stop what you were doing because I thought maybe Tom, because I saw Tom interacting in the comment section. I thought maybe he could still hear. So now he's telling me that he didn't hear this. So I can go ahead and grant you that time if you want to go ahead and take your liberty to make your arguments again. It's up to you. I'm letting you deal with it however you want, Daniel.
Daniel, my apologies. It was not a ploy. I promise.
Yeah, no. That's in the spirit of fairness. I'd be more than happy to do that. If you were a Christian, I wouldn't trust you. But since you're an atheist, I know that you can be honest about it.
Funny. That's funny.
All right. So yeah, no problem, brother. I'll go ahead and throw it out there again. Let's see. Where was I? Let's start with. Okay. So morality. Did you hear the definition of morality? Did you hear the first part of it?
Yes.
Okay. So let's get into the meat of it then. So with logic, the three primary rules of logic are objectively true. We've got the law of identity, right, which is the first law of logic. A is A. The law of non-contradiction is the second law. P, not P, the proposition or not the proposition. And then you've got the third law of logic, which is P is either true or false. The proposition must be either true or false. Those are the laws of logic. They are objective. It's how we navigate the world around us and observe the objective truth about the world around us. We can make subjective claims that are logically true, but anything that is objectively true must necessarily be logically true. Anything that is true cannot be false, and vice versa. The reason that morality must be objective is based on these very demonstrable laws of logic. Subjective morality leads to logical contradictions and thus must necessarily be false. If we know that morality exists and we can prove that subjective morality is false, then objective morality provides the only remaining explanation according to the laws of logic. Morality cannot be both objective and subjective at the same time because they cannot both be subjective and not subjective at the same time. The causal link that leads from morality to human flourishing is simplified by the statement, morals are universal propositions which are necessary preconditions of cooperation, and cooperation is a natural law that leads to human flourishing, which is guided by the natural laws of evolution, and all natural laws must follow the laws of logic and are true independent of any mind. My formal argument is as follows. Premise number 1, things that are objectively true are logically true. Premise number 2, logic is the grounding of all morality. Premise number 3, if morality is subjective, then it can lead to logical contradictions. Premise number 4, all logical contradictions are necessarily false. The conclusion is such is because all morals are ultimately grounded in logic, then they are objectively true or false. Examples of how subjective morality leads to contradictions. If the slave master thinks slavery is moral and the slave thinks slavery is not moral, then you have a logical contradiction. The slave and slave master cannot both be right. If the man who commits murder thinks it is morally justified to murder someone, then this inherently infers that the murderer values his own life, and thus he necessarily sees the inherent and moral value of life. And thus the claim that taking away the life of another person is morally justified is a logical contradiction. If morality is subjective, that would necessarily mean that it can be both right and wrong to commit murder based on the stance of the observer. This leads to a logical contradiction, as murder cannot be both moral and immoral at the same time. Any immoral action must be universally immoral, or it leads to a possible contradiction. If subjective morality leads to a contradiction, then it must be objective in order to avoid any logical contradictions. If morality is objective, then it must be universally objective. All objective truths are grounded in logic. All logical truths are universally true. All propositions are necessary. Okay, here we go. I'm sorry. All declarative propositions are necessarily true or false. That's our third law of logic. All moral claims are declarative propositions. All claims about objective morals. Oh, that's not the right one. Okay, all claims about objective morality are declarative. Oh, wait a minute. I got the wrong one. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to backtrack on what I did here. Let me start over. All declarative propositions are necessarily true or false. If all moral claims are declarative propositions, then they are factually true or false. All claims about objective morality are declarative propositions. All subjective claims about morality can lead to contradictions. Therefore, all true moral facts are necessarily objective. And I think I will stop there and we'll go into the rebuttals.
Perfect. Wonderful. I can tell already, you guys, like I said before, you guys have a wealth of knowledge. This is very, very interesting topic. So rebuttals. Tom, do you get the first one? Daniel, do you get even though you did your affirmative, do you get yours first?
Yeah, then let's go Tom first in every stage, and then I'll finish in each stage. That's fine.
Cool. We'll do that. Okay, Tom, go ahead. You have a 5-minute rebuttal. So I'll go ahead and set the timer in 5, 4, 3, 2, and you may begin.
So Daniel, you said that morality is grounded in logic. And I would definitely push back on that and saying morality is grounded in a very strong feeling. A feeling that is stronger than other feelings because we call it this thing called morals that we share amongst society. And it's something that we all agree on for the time being until, like I said earlier, the language of morality evolves with us. So I think you mentioned that morality must be objective because otherwise we couldn't call things like genocide or slavery wrong. Like how could we do such a thing? But that's not really an argument. It's kind of an emotional veto. You're saying, I can't stomach the idea of subjectivity, therefore morality must be objective. It's not really philosophy. It's kind of just a fear of not being able to pick a side. It doesn't seem quite logical to me. I think you also said that we know, or something along the lines of, we know that killing for fun is wrong, or murder is wrong. Sure we do, but that consensus is not a cosmic truth. The same way we all agree pizza tastes good, the consistency of the preference doesn't make it objective. So that's something that I wanted to kind of hit home tonight, is that it's not based in any kind of logical system. It is a strong societal feeling. That's what our morality is. I think you also mentioned that moral progress implies objective truth, like science discovering physical facts. Well, I would disagree that it would imply some kind of cultural evolution. We would call progress, only relative to our own values. But when society expands empathy, we cheer because it aligns with our own preferences. That's a subjective alignment, not moral gravity pulling us to some objective North Pole. So I think, lastly here, I'll say that subjectivism is blamed for leading to chaos. Anything goes if everything is subjective. That's like saying, art being subjective means everyone stops painting. Subjectivity doesn't erase meaning, it just personalizes it, basically. We still act morally because compassion, trust, and cooperation actually work. They create the world we want to live in. We don't need a cosmic babysitter for that or some kind of a cosmic scorecard. So I don't think they've given evidence for any kind of independent moral reality. Yeah, I think you've dressed up emotion and consensus in some kind of robe and call it objective. I'm still waiting for one moral truth that survives without minds to perceive it. Thank you.
Very, very good. Very good input. Go ahead, Daniel. You now have your 5 minutes to go ahead and have your rebuttal, correct? And I can go ahead and set the timer.
Subjective morality runs into a number of problems and appears to me to be completely indefensible. I think one of the most well-known arguments is the Frege-Geach problem, sometimes called the embedding problem. This is a significant challenge to the subjective view. The embedding problem argues that this non-cognitivist type view is based on emotions, subjectivity, does not fit with certain ways we use moral judgments, particularly moral reasoning and the embedding of moral judgments in conditional statements. Expressions of emotions don't combine in the same structured, truth-preserving way that truth-apt propositions do. This conditional statement only makes sense if the antecedent, stealing is wrong, is capable of being true or false. For example, premise number 1, stealing is wrong. Premise number 2, if stealing is wrong, then getting your little brother to steal is also wrong. The conclusion follows, therefore, getting your little brother to steal is wrong. And this is a perfectly valid argument. The conclusion follows logically from the premises. The fact that moral judgments make sense in conditional statements and logical arguments suggests they are truth-apt, i.e. that objective moral cognitivism is correct and subjective moral non-cognitivism is false. Subjective morality also holds a high burden of proof. One must bridge the gap between two objectively true statements, that if a person is murdered, objectively true, their loved ones will feel sorrow and loss, also true. Or murder is illegal in every country in the world, objectively true, because studies have consistently shown that the belief that murder is wrong is universal, also true. The subjective moral view offers no explanation of how boo murder as a subjective position can bridge these objective facts about murder. In short, if subjective morality is correct, it becomes very hard to explain how moral judgments can appear in conditional statements, how moral judgments can appear in logical arguments, how such arguments can even be valid, or how moral reasoning even works at all. And my opponent also mentioned evolution several times, and then mentioned his feelings about different actions. That actually is the Hume's guillotine. I don't know if he was referring to himself at that time, because I think he was trying to say that I was, by basing this in logic, was committing the fallacy that is up, but that's actually the fallacy that he's using by saying that, well, there's this evolution, and that's part of evolution, but we ought to have feelings about it, and therefore that connects these lines. So he's actually stuck in the guillotine himself there. The other thing that I don't understand is if he ties it to evolution, he uses statements like, we all agree. These are universal statements. The universality of statements about morality is exactly what supports the objective viewpoint. It does not support his subjective viewpoint whatsoever. In fact, it actually weakens his argument significantly. So I was surprised that he actually went there. Context relative, he mentioned that, but he seems to forget that morality is specifically relative to the context of the human condition. He wants to look at objective moral facts that are just out in outer space, but it's objectively true that this planets orbit around the sun. If there's a void in space and there's no star, there's not going to be any planets there. Does that mean the objective facts about the planet and the stars no longer exist because there's a void? Of course not. So everything is context dependent, everything is relative. Morality is context dependent to the human condition. If you take humans out of the situation, you're not going to be talking about morality. You don't need to look at it independently of humans. That literally makes no sense. It's incoherent. And I think that's about as many questions as remarks I can make right now. Thank you.
All right. Now, at this time, I believe we have cross examinations, and then we'll have, I believe, an open discussion, if I remember correctly. But I do believe we have cross examinations at this time. Who's going to go ahead and go first with this cross exam?
Tom always goes first.
Right. Okay. So go ahead, Tom. Since you have the affirmative, you can go ahead and do the cross examination. I believe we said, was it 7 minutes, Daniel, or do we want to?
Yeah, 7 minutes sounds good.
7. Okay, 7.
7 minutes. Okay. Let me go ahead. 7 minutes. Let me go ahead and set the timer. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone in the comment section, for your attention. I'm looking forward to the rest of this debate. Here we go. 3, 2, and 7 minutes, Tom.
All right, Tristan, you can just tell me when I'm coming close to the time mark. So
I'll give you 1 minute. I'll
thank you.
Give you 1 minute. Yeah.
So, Daniel, you are claiming that something like murder is wrong is a moral truth, that this is real. Where does this exist in a physical space, in math, anywhere? Where is this written?
It's not codified, except that it actually is codified because every single country in the world makes murder illegal. Is that what you mean by codification?
Yeah, but would you not agree that history would definitely have said differently than what you're saying now if you were to have, I don't know, been born in Aztec times and human sacrifice was considered normal for the day? Would you wouldn't have the same idea that murder was wrong that you do today? There's no way you could. Would you agree or disagree?
I agree that our understanding of objective facts does evolve with time through the scientific method. You know, everybody thought the Earth was flat. That doesn't mean the Earth actually was flat, right? The Earth has always been a sphere, an oblique spheroid for those to get really technical. But yeah, so the Earth was never flat. Everyone thought the Earth was flat. That doesn't mean the Earth was
Sure.
flat.
So, if you say that morality exists independently of minds, would murder is wrong still be true in the universe without life?
That's correct. It's an objective truth, which means it's universal truth, which means it's true in all possible universes. So there's a cosmological truth to it.
So, can you explain what murder even means without a living being?
No, murder is a term that describes human beings specifically by definition.
Right, but that's what I said in my previous question. Independent of minds, would murder be wrong if there was no minds to be able to say it or to think it?
I'm not sure exactly how this question makes sense because without people, you can't have murder. So you can't think morality couldn't be subjective or objective. It couldn't be argued about. You wouldn't have morality, you wouldn't have murder, you wouldn't have anything without people. So there's no murder on Mars until you fly astronauts out there and they start killing each other randomly for some reason.
So you admit that morality is clearly mind dependent.
No, it's a latent property of the universe. So it's tied to evolution, right? So we see it with human flourishing. So as soon as life begins, right, life evolves to a certain point. Certain animals have certain traits. So laws of nature
Sure.
that govern aquatic animals don't necessarily have an effect on flying animals, right? Because it's context relevant. So when we get into a higher state of mind, now we have consciousness, what we refer to as consciousness. Now we have what we call culpability. Animals don't have culpability, right? At least most people don't think they do. I think you and I would probably agree on that animals don't have culpability. The lion doesn't commit a crime against the deer by eating the deer because there's a balance in nature that the lion isn't going to take too many deer out of the forest because the lion will starve. The deer's not going to eat too much grass because the deer will starve, and so on and so forth. The food chain balances itself out. Nature has this way of balancing things out. Morality is just one of the mechanisms that nature uses to balance out cooperative species that are highly evolved enough to understand culpability.
So while I do understand what you're saying, the idea that everything balances out. If you've ever heard of anyone having chickens and a weasel gets into your chicken hen, it's going to kill every single chicken, even though there's no way it can eat all of them. So even in nature, things do kill for fun. It's not just a matter of survival. So I'm glad that you kind of went down the path that I wanted to go on next. Would you accept that moral emotions, empathy, guilt, outrage evolved through a natural selection?
I'm sorry. So I think, am I responding to the chicken coop or was that just a comment? Am I responding to, was that a question?
Chicken coop was just a comment. The question was after.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Then go ahead, please. I'm sorry. Would you please repeat that in the question phase? I was trying to focus on the question part.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry. So would you accept that moral emotions like empathy, guilt, and outrage evolved through natural selection?
Yeah, I think that's actually a bit of a fallacy because I don't think moral emotions is a thing. I don't think it's an emotive process. I don't think emotions are involved. I think it's a natural process. So it's a logical process. So I don't agree with the premise of the question itself. It's a question begging question is a question begging fallacy because I don't think it's an emotion at all.
Okay. Would you say that evolved instincts point to an objective truth or a survival advantage?
I would say it's a survival advantage. Cooperation in a cooperative species like humans are. We are a social animal. We require cooperation. Like Carl Sagan said, few working together can accomplish so much more than many individuals can alone.
Okay. But you would also have to agree then that evolution gave us contradictory drives. We have compassion and cruelty, fairness and vengeance. Which one is objectively correct, and how do you know?
Because cruelty cannot ultimately lead to cooperation. Vengeance cannot lead to cooperation. To better understand these, we need to do is look at virtue, like Aristotelian virtue ethics, for example. This is what ultimately leads to our highest form of cooperation, and this is what leads to human flourishing. The better we've gotten at cooperation, as you astutely pointed out in your opening statement, we've gotten really good at cooperation, right? Over time, we realize what works and what doesn't work, kind of like our flat earth analogy here. So with morality is a baseline. We identify more successful moral actions, moral truths. We do this through virtue.
So I'm going to give you a chance to think about this one for a second.
30
you-
seconds,
Okay.
by the way, Tom. 30 seconds, by the way.
Thank you. Last question. Can you name one moral principle that every culture in human history has agreed upon?
One moral principle throughout human history. I think that's actually a loaded question. I don't think it's possible to, because again, there isn't a single principle that you could point at that's objectively true. Like the Earth, we live on the Earth. There isn't. There are flat earthers even today who think the Earth is flat. So that I can't think of a single principle, subjective or objective, that anybody agrees on, even an objective one that you and I could agree is objective. So I think that's kind of a loaded question there. I'm not sure, unless I miss the meat of it, but I just don't think that exists. Just because we don't agree upon something, I don't think it has
Time,
anything to
you
do with the
guys.
validity of it. Oh,
Time, you guys. Time. Okay. Very good. Now I believe we're going to go ahead and reverse this. And Daniel, you can go ahead and do your cross exam. So yeah, we can go ahead and do this. I set the timer for 7 minutes. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead.
Tom, are you familiar with the cosmological argument from PhD scholar Richard Carrier's recent 2025 peer-reviewed paper published in Religions MDPI, which presents a rigorous and provocative argument that objective moral facts not only exist, but must exist in all possible universes containing rational agents?
I know Richard Carrier, and I like a lot of his stuff, but no, I have not seen that paper or heard of it, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, no, he's actually one of my favorites, to be honest with you. He gets a lot of trash for his mythicist position, but anyway, sidetrack. But I do love Carrier. Anyway, okay. Can contradictions exist in formal logic? Do you disagree or agree with the laws of logic as I laid them out? Laws 1, 2, and 3.
I would say that formal contradictions are a logical fallacy.
Okay. If a colorblind person subjectively thinks the red ball is actually blue, does that objectively turn the red ball into a blue ball?
I think your question is demonstrated, because if a colorblind person, they would only see shades of gray. They wouldn't know what blue even is.
Well, I don't, whatever color you want, they're not going to see the color it is. So my brother's colorblind and he actually does see colors. So he just doesn't see them as the same colors we all do. So I guess the meat of the question is, hypothetically speaking, if a person subjectively sees a ball and he doesn't realize it's reflecting the red photons, right? He thinks it's reflecting green photons. Does it mean the ball is actually, if it is actually in fact reflecting red photons, does his subjective opinion determine what is true or false about that ball? Or do the photons that reflect off of it determine what's actually what color it is?
It would be the frequency of the light that's being bounced off of the ball that would tell you if it's falling within the red spectrum.
Perfect. Okay. And do all human beings share the same subjective beliefs about natural laws? Did I lose you?
I didn't hear a word you said.
Do all human beings share the same subjective beliefs about natural laws?
Absolutely not.
Does different ideas about natural laws affect whether these laws are true or false?
Different ideas. I don't think that these laws exist as a fundamental truth. So they clearly are subjective from my perspective. And whether, they're true and they're false to the people at the time.
So I'm talking about natural laws. You don't think there's any natural laws? So, like, you don't think the laws of physics or evolutionary processes are driven by natural laws objectively? You don't think that exists?
Natural laws, even like physics laws, are in a state of constant flux themselves. So it's hard to say that anything is in a completely static state, which is another reason why I push back on objective morality, because it mean that it's static and not evolving with us.
So a law has to be static. It can't be evolutionary.
If it's an
I'm
objectively true law, then yes, it should be static. It cannot be evolutionary by definition, I would say.
So I thought our definition of objective is that it was mind independent. I didn't realize static had anything to do with the definition for objective. But let's see it. So do you agree that the natural laws exist prior to our discovery of them and independent of our minds? Or do you think that there are no natural laws?
I think what we categorize as natural laws are the phenomenon that we observe within our observable universe. And and we've put a label on it to give it some kind of a construct, some kind of a category. What gravity actually is, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say I do. What any of the laws of physics actually are, the strong electric magnetic, or sorry, magnetic forces. Like, what is this when you fundamentally come down to it? It's like, okay, you know what? At a certain point, it bottoms out at I don't know, and that's where the honesty lies, I believe.
No, I think that's perfectly reasonable and I think that's fair. But what you're telling me is that those laws didn't exist before humans had a chance to observe them, or that they don't exist at all, and that observation is the only thing that matters. If I'm decoding what you're saying here.
I mean, is there a value when there's no valuer to put any kind of value on that?
Well, you're
It's
putting a value on existence. I'm actually just talking about existence in itself. I'm not asking you to make a value judgment.
but sans a mind, you have no concept of existence.
Well, I understand that, but that's not what we're talking about. That's not even what I'm asking about. I'm asking about natural laws that guide processes, natural processes. And
Okay.
it seems like you're under the impression that those don't exist unless we look at them and observe them. So the earth was here before any living organism was here. So there
Sure.
had to be natural laws that put it here. No mind put it here, unless you believe in some kind of a cosmic mind, which you're
No,
welcome to believe
absolutely.
whatever you want. I'm not here to judge you, obviously, but um, I don't believe in a cosmic mind. I believe in natural processes exclusively. So if there's no cosmic mind, then what put the planet here before we were here to subjectively question whether it was flat or round? That doesn't, I'm
And
not following you.
I would agree with you when you say natural processes, but saying that these are completely static, unchanging laws, that's where I might have a little bit of an issue with.
Well, you're actually the one that used that vernacular. You said they had to be static in order to be objective. I never said anything like that whatsoever. So I'm just
30
trying to get
seconds.
an
30
understanding of,
seconds.
where you're at with the fact that basically observation is irrelevant to the truth. We can observe the truth. It might be purely coincidental. It might be deterministic. There's a lot of different reasons, things we could point at, but the truth must exist outside of our observation, outside of our opinion, outside of our subjectivity, is I guess ultimately what I was trying to see if you even got to that concept. But that was interesting. We'll have to have maybe in the open discussion, we can flesh that out a little more.
Sure.
Well, an open discussion, that's time, you guys, would be absolutely phenomenal. If you guys want to go ahead and have that open discussion now, we can go ahead and set that up, put a timer. Or if you guys want to go ahead and do some other closing statements. It's up to you guys.
Yeah, let's run an open discussion for like, what was it, like 10 minutes or something like that?
10 minutes.
Sure.
I mean, we could. How about
Yeah.
15? I
15's
think
good. Yeah, 15's
good.
15's probably better. You're right.
The reason why I'm saying that is because it goes by very, very quickly, and there are people in the comment section. We have, I want to say, maybe a little under a dozen questions so far. So you guys in the comment section, go ahead if you want to, bring your challenges to any of these gentlemen. Go ahead. I already got your questions. Those of you guys that are in the comment section, I'm just going to go through them in order at the end of the debate. Open discussion, 15 minutes. Here it goes in 3, 2, and Tom, since you're taking the affirmative, you can kind of go ahead and lead, and you guys just go ahead and freestyle. 3, 2, and 1.
All right. I mean, I'll just start off with say, like, if you can imagine like a method, a scientific, logical, something empirical that can verify a moral claim, what would it be? What's the closest that you think it can come to?
I think the easiest one is to focus on something like murder, because human flourishing is imperative to, we take morality and ethics are tied to virtue. Virtue is tied to well-being. Well-being is a necessary precondition for human flourishing. So if we look for human flourishing, we say, okay, let's look at something like murder, for example. That's a really easy one, right? We can't just go around wantonly murdering people, because any society that tried to do that would collapse eventually, right? Because you can't just go around killing people. You have to have some kind of stability because of cooperation. And we know that there's cooperation. We know that we're a social species. We know that we've flourished. Our population grows every year. And so that's the empirical data that we could look to for this objective truth about murder is what I would think. What do you think about it?
So something like murder, I think, is very time context dependent, because a quote unquote murderer in a time of war is a national hero. In the time of Aztecs, would have been a shaman. And we can look back on it with, our 2025 morality and say, well, that's clearly not okay. And that's not okay. And, tossing babies off of cliffs and, beheading people to think that you have better crops coming to you is just not okay. And I would absolutely agree. But that's where I think that, again, the crux of everything kind of comes down to is morality is just a strong feeling to me. Really, it's one of those feelings that is hard to shake because it's kind of core. You shouldn't torture babies. Well, yes, I feel the same disgust when I even imagine the idea, right? But is it objectively true? Is it written somewhere on Saturn that we shouldn't torture babies? No, of course not. It's silly to think so. You know what I mean? And, like I said, back in Spartan times, if a baby wasn't up to snuff, it went over the wall. It was perfectly okay. It was considered normal. It was considered moral even at the time to do so for the benefit of the society. So I think that what we call murder today would have been a hero in World War II, would have been a shaman in Aztec times, would have been labeled any number of things, but not a murderer.
Well, I think it's an interesting point. I think I disagree to a certain degree that, what we do in war is not considered murder, and there are certain crimes that we come to understand are war crimes. The shaman situation with the sacrifices and stuff like that, we have come to a higher understanding of things. I definitely agree with you on that. But just because we've come to a higher understanding of things doesn't mean that there wasn't an objective truth, an underlying truth that was there all along. It's our observation of what is true. So I mentioned in my my rebuttal to you, one of the biggest obstacles that your subjective moral problem contains is that it becomes almost impossible to explain how moral judgments can appear in conditional statements, how moral judgments can appear in logical arguments, how these arguments can be valid, or how moral reasoning even works at all. And you've hijacked some terms like universal and evolution into your theory, but you haven't built any bridges between your subjective claim and your evolutionary claim, or your your understanding of how this is only subjective, and yet we have these universal truths that we view as truths that you even say, well, it appears to be true, but it isn't true. Can you maybe build that bridge for me so I can kind of understand how you're actually even getting to your conclusions? Because it sounds like you're just kind of throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall and looking to see what's going to stick and then drawing a circle around it, kind of a Texas sharpshooter style, unless, but maybe you just haven't had time to articulate it yet because you're trying to get a lot of points.
Well, I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, I think morality is definitely the key, because even something like empathy would have been quite crucial for a society to be cohesive, tight, and evolve together. You look at societies even today, where you have like I live in Canada, and you look at Eskimo society. The elderly by themselves put themselves on an ice floe and they go out to sea to die because they're no longer contributing members of society. This is considered moral in their society, even in 2025. So, from an evolutionary perspective, this has gotten them to the survival that they are still here today with us. They didn't die off, in the last ice age. They're still here because of certain moral truths, as you like to say, that they've had to adopt in order to get to where they are, in order to just be able to live every day, to go hunting, to survive. So while we might look at something like that as pretty, kind of extreme, to think that I'm going to put dear grandma or dear grandpa on an ice floe and push them out to their death, to them, it's the moral and ethical thing to do. So how you can sit there and say that it's objectively true across the board that murder is illegal? Well, it's clearly not, because it's not been defined as murder across history. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's been defined as different things. Ritual sacrifice was not classified as murder. It was called the sacrifice to the gods. How many of those happened during history? And it was considered okay, perfectly moral. So, the Aztecs didn't survive for a reason, because they killed too many of their own, pretty much, it seems like. If it goes to an extreme, you have this extreme problem. So it's tied in with evolution, it's tied in with social norms, it's tied in with our feelings. This is something that we hold as a core belief because it's a strong feeling. It's not just a passing feeling. And that's what I think I'm trying to convey the most tonight here.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is a strong inclination, but it's strong for a reason, and it's universal. It appears to be a universal feeling it evokes, for a reason. Just because it hasn't been illegal, ultimately we feel the loss. So, how do you deal with the logical contradictions of subjective morality?
Like what?
Well, let's say the baby sacrifice situation. That's you've got atheists and agnostics like you and I are. We read the narrative about the global flood, and it turns our stomach because we think about the women and children, the babies, and everybody drowning. Right? Well, the theist
Sure.
says, no, 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 that's okay. God did it. It's perfectly morally good. Well, we have a direct contradiction logically. It cannot be good and not good at the same time. It's
Sure.
got to be one or the other, right? So how do you overcome the contradiction if everything is subjective? Then you're saying, well, it can be a logical contradiction, and just kind of hand waving it away.
It's actually not as hard as you may think, because what is God? God is, in fact, a subject. So even if the morality coming from the Christian or the theist camp is coming from what they call some God belief, it's still from a subjective opinion of God, because God can change his mind tomorrow for all they know. They don't know that God is not going to change his moral stance on any particular subject at any given time. He could snap his fingers and change his mind, right?
Okay. No, that's my fault. That's my fault for maybe miscommunication. I wasn't talking about is it subjective because of God, because you and I know it's actually divine command theory, or subjective because of exactly what you said. No, I'm talking
Sure.
about the action itself of the drowning babies. Maybe that was a bad analogy, because I agree with you 100%. Divine command theory is a type of subjective morality. That's I don't disagree with you at all. I'm talking about the actual action of the drowning of the babies. You and I say that's terrible.
Sure.
The Christian and the Jew and the Muslim say, no, that's good because God can't do anything terrible. So forget the God angle of is it subjective or objective. The drowning of the babies, that's where we have a logical contradiction. How do you get around the
Okay.
contradictions?
So I say that anyone that doesn't consider drowning a world with a whole bunch of babies on it, I call them morally bankrupt. It's that simple. If you're going to allow your theology to override your moral systems to that degree, then I'm sorry, but you are decayed to the core if you think that drowning a bunch of babies is in any way, shape, or form considered good. And if you do, then you and I just don't have the same terminology of good. It's that I don't know what else to say because you're butchering the word at that point in time. There's no meaning to the word good.
Exactly. I would agree with you. Fundamentally, the word good must have an objective meaning, which is the opposite of bad. And it does ultimately ground out in something that just has an objective meaning. So therefore, the only way that you can get around the contradictions is by looking at something that's objective, which means the morality itself, the ultimate arbiter of whether morality is good or bad, right or wrong, drowning babies is good or bad, has to be objective. Because if it's not, then you can say, and you and I can agree that that's the most detestable thing, stomach churning thing. Thank God it's just a fairy tale or a myth. Because if that was real life, I wouldn't, I don't think I could live in a world like that where there's this kind of stuff going on. We have to call that good. But
But does it? But
that's
does it
all
not
subjective.
clearly? But does it not clearly show the extreme subjectivity that humans will go to justify one belief system over another?
It does.
Like you have Christians and Jews believing the flood myth and calling it good, whereas we're going to call that evil to the core. So they have their worldview that is saying, oh no, anything God does is good, whereas we're going to look at it and go, wait a minute, I don't know how you classified that as good. And that's where it's clearly subjective because they're looking at it from their perspective and we're looking at it from our perspective, and there's no meeting in the middle on this. We're gonna stand firm in our camp and say no, killing drowning babies is evil, it's immoral, it's not good to do for any reason. I will die on this hill. Whereas
Right.
they're going to look at it and be like, well, you know what, God did it, he's got some reason, and it's got to be good because he said so. Well,
Exactly. But that's the logical contradiction that we run into. And you and I can agree that that's not good, but they say it is good. We're looking at the same situation. There is literally, it is impossible based on the laws of logic for it to be both good and not good. It cannot be both morally justified and immoral at the same time. So you and I having an opinion about it that's different than their opinion about it is illogical. There's a logical contradiction. The subjective view doesn't solve the problem. It points to the problem. Because I agree with everything you said. I think it's a terrible story. And I think that people who defend those types of stories and those types of beliefs, I think to a degree they are morally bankrupt. And I hate to say it because I have a lot of really good friends who are religious, family members, people I care about and people I respect in a lot of ways. But when people have to defend things like that, I'm like, holy fuck, what is going on here? Are we that degenerate as a species that we're still looking at these kind of tales and legends and saying we're forced to say that's beautiful. Oh my God, I can't even conceive of it. I think you and I are in the same boat there. But just because you and I agree, and a lot of people would agree with us, every atheist and agnostic for sure would say that's terrible. People have even like Buddhists might even say something like that is terrible. There's other religions that might not agree with that,
sure,
but there are
but
people who would say it is good.
no,
That
and I agree, and I've heard Christians, multiple Christians say, well, if there was no God, I'd be out killing and raping, and I'm
yeah,
just sitting
yeah.
back going, wait a minute, do you have an ounce of any kind of ethics or morality or empathy in you that without this book you would be that horrible of a human being? Like this is the part that you say it's objectively true. Look with just the Christians that you and I speak to on a regular basis, it's clearly not. You know what I mean? Like I've heard Christians say that if God commanded them, they would rape babies for God like it's just absolutely nuts. And
Yeah.
to think
And I'm not.
to think that there's some moral arbiter out there that's saying, you know what, if I say so, it's good, or if it's written on Saturn, it's good, or whatever. It just goes either right over my head. I don't see how that's possible, but it doesn't make any sense on in a realistic kind of perspective.
And I want to be clear because I know we're out of time, I think, for this, but I just want to be real clear that I don't think, I know for a fact, Tom, that you and I have at least one common friend who we both respect and both enjoy. And I'm not going to name names, but he's a
Agreed.
Catholic friend of ours. And I have a lot of friends I interact with online who are believers. And we're not here to just dunk on that example. The reason I brought it in was not to take a cheap shot at believers, but because it provides such a tangible argument, an example that both Tom and I have experienced, and there's a lot of people who I know understand this example. So I think it gives us a really good objective example that we can look at. And this is not a dunk on religious people opportunity. It's just something that we can identify as being a problem that I see with the subjective claim, is that Tom and I see it one way, other people see it a different way. We're both looking at the same exact situation. We cannot both be right. One of us, either we're both wrong or one of us is wrong, but we cannot both be right based on the laws of logic. So I'm just trying to figure out how the subjectivist, the moral relativist, the non-cognitivist, how do you guys, you're in this camp together, how do you guys actually get around this logical contradiction? And it sounded like you're ultimately grounding the answer in something that's objective. And I agree with you. If we went around and treating babies like this, we would have, societies would collapse. If we just started doing terrible things to babies,
Sure.
all of us, except us, societies would collapse. And I think that's the evidence that when we look at the empirical stuff, they say this means these morals, these virtues, these things actually do provide a function. And if we say that it's completely subjective, then I don't understand where we get the functionality from, because we're not all going to see things the same way.
Time. Okay, you guys, before we give our closing statements, I know, Tom, you might want to, you probably feel you might want to respond to that. But I do want to get
I'm
to
good.
okay. I do want to get to the question and answer portion before you guys do your closing remarks, unless you guys want to.
Let's do the closing and then we'll wrap that up for the formal debate. Because I don't want the closing to be part of I don't want the audience questions necessarily to be part of the scoring, because it's completely off the wall. We don't know what kind of questions and what's coming. I think for the debate itself, let's do the closing and then let's go ahead and take the audience questions. Does that sound good to you, Tom?
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. Okay.
So
then Tom, go ahead. Go ahead, do your closing. 5-minute closings for both parties. Is that agreeable?
You said 5 or 7? All right, whatever.
I have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, I have 7 minutes. Actually, no, we wrote 7 minutes down. So how about we compromise right in the middle?
7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Okay. Go ahead, Tom, in 3, 2, and.
All right. So if we cut through a lot of the, the philosobabble and get to the meat of what's at stake tonight, the difference is a world that either obeys or a world that chooses. My opponent here wants morality to be fixed, independent, cosmic, something outside of us that feels safe. If morality exists out there, we don't have to take responsibility for it. We just follow the map. It's not my opinion, it's truth. But that comfort is an illusion. There's no stone tablet floating behind the stars. It's just us, fallible, emotional, reasoning, creative human beings, inventing meaning because the universe won't give it to us. And I say that it's not tragic. It's actually extraordinary. If morality were objective, it would be static, eternal, the same forever. Slavery, patriarchy, conquest, the moral frameworks that dominated our ancestors would still be true if they were ever true in the first place. Objective morality freezes evolution. But subjectivity, that messy, human, adaptive thing that we know, allows for growth. It's why we can look back and say, we were wrong. We can actually do better. Moral progress only exists because morality is ours to shape. My opponent keeps saying, without objective morality, how can you condemn the Nazis, basically? The answer is simple. I don't need a metaphysical referee to hate genocide. I don't need cosmic permission to protect the innocent. My outrage is enough. My empathy is enough. The collective conscience of humanity forged in blood, trauma, and love is actually enough. Moral objectivists like to pretend that they've anchored morality in something absolute. But all they've done really is move the furniture around. They start with a feeling, this is wrong, then try to justify it as some universal law. Theology with the serial numbers basically filed off. They'll say well-being is objectively good. Why? Because we like it, because it feels right, because it helps us flourish. That's not objectivity. That's preference basically dressed up in a tuxedo uniform. And that's fine. Preference, form, the foundation is the value we hold dear. So subjectivity isn't weakness. It's actually honesty. It admits that values come from valuers. Goodness isn't floating in the ether, waiting just to be discovered. It's something we decide, negotiate, and actually refine over time. Every society that's ever existed throughout thought it was moral. Crusaders thought they were moral. Inquisitors thought they were moral. Nazis thought they were moral. So morality can't be measured by feeling right. It's a test that is reflecting, revising, listening, learning, subjective human processes. Moral progress comes from empathic evolution, not some absolute truth. Look at history. Morality tracks with empathy, not revelation. The more we see others like ourselves, the more inclusive our moral circles become. The universe doesn't care about equality or justice. We do. That's what makes them precious to us. Objectivity is cold, detached. It's indifferent. If morality were truly objective, it wouldn't bend to new evidence or compassion. But morality clearly does bend, and that's its beauty. It bends towards empathy, towards understanding, coexistence, because we made it bend that way. I don't want a universe that hands me ethics like commandments. I want a humanity brave enough to build them. Morality isn't discovered, it's created. Every law, every reform, every revolution in rights. That's humanity painting meaning onto a blank canvas of universal indifference. When my opponent says that without objectivity, morality collapses, I say the exact opposite. Without subjectivity, morality never lives. It never breathes. It's a stagnant fossil. Subjectivity gives morality texture. It lets us argue, change, grow, feel. It allows a society that once burned heretics to one that celebrates freedom of thought. It allows a world that once enslaved millions to now aspire, even imperfectly, to dignity. That's not a cosmic upgrade. That's us learning to care on a bigger scale. And yes, caring is subjective. It's not grounded in stars or math, but it's grounded in something far more real. It's the heartbeat of conscious beings trying to make existence kinder than it has to be. So tonight, I'm not arguing for chaos. I'm arguing for ownership. Moral meaning isn't something we find, it's something we build through empathy, through reason, shared experience. That's not weakness. That's why it matters so much. If the universe itself declared morality, it wouldn't need us, but it doesn't. It's silent. And out of that silence, we've made a compassion sing. That's humanity's miracle, not divine law. It's not objective truth, but the ability to carve meaning out of chaos. So I hope you take this from tonight's debate. Morality isn't objective. And thank goodness it isn't, because it means it's alive, and most importantly, it means it's ours. Thank you.
Very, very good. And again, you guys, we do have quite a bit of questions for both parties. This has been a very informative debate. Daniel, if you want to go ahead and take your liberty, 7 minutes for your closing, by all means, you go ahead and proceed.
While my opponent, Tom, did an excellent job articulating his talking points, his arguments for subjective morality were not substantiated with a logical argument, a valid syllogism, or reasonable justification for how saying boo murder bridges the gap between those emotional statements and two objectively true observations about murder and the effects of murder on society. I can only conclude that his position for subjective morality is grounded wholly in his own personal incredulity towards objective morality. This is a logical fallacy, and thus his argument should be rejected as being fallacious. I already mentioned Dr. Carrier's peer-reviewed work in support of objective morality, but I want to close by citing some of the greatest philosophical minds in all of history who have all made very strong arguments in favor of objective morality. St. Thomas Aquinas. The natural law from Aquinas is a philosophical and legal theory that posits the existence of a set of inherent laws derived from nature and universal moral principles, which are discoverable through reason. In ethics, natural law theory asserts that certain rights and moral values are inherent in human nature and can be understood universally, independent of enacted laws or societal norms. Immanuel Kant. Kant believed that morality is the objective law of reason. Just as objective physical laws necessitate physical actions, for example, apples fall down because of gravity, objective rational moral laws necessitate rational moral actions. Therefore, according to Kant, rational morality is universal and cannot change depending on circumstance. Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. Aristotle's ethics is built around the premise that people should achieve an excellent character by practicing virtue in order to ultimately attain well-being. It is sometimes referred to in comparison to later ethical theories known as character-based ethics. Like Plato and Socrates, Aristotle emphasized the importance of reason and that there were logical and natural reasons for humans to behave ethically and try to become morally virtuous. I did not get a single citation or a single source from my opponent in defense of his position. I heard a lot of arguments based on incredulity. I did not get any bridges to the gaps that I was exposing regarding logical contradictions, the gap between objective truths and the emotions that he has conveyed to justification for how we handle those truths. So I feel really unsatisfied with the argument that I got tonight. I was expecting to get maybe one of the formal models for maybe non-cognitivism or something like that. And really what I got a lot of is I don't like objective morality because I don't want to feel like there's a boss or some cosmic law guiding my actions. Everything is based on my will. And I think this is kind of a knee-jerk reaction that can come from the skeptic community. I, as an agnostic, fully understand that when we reject concepts about a deity or a God, it is very tempting for us to just say we have full ownership, we have the full mantle of everything around us, that we don't have to bow down to anything. That can be a weakness from the skeptic position, and theists use that against us a lot. They look at us like we're all nihilists. You can't have any purpose or meaning in anything. And we can find purpose and meaning. First of all, what we do is we work with nature. That's the number one purpose. We work with the natural world around us and we harmonize with nature. That is the number one objective to living a fulfilled life. We do this as human beings, as highly evolved animals, through virtue. Morals and ethics are tied directly to virtue. Virtue is a necessary precondition of well-being. Well-being is a condition that leads to human flourishing. We have the evidence that substantiates my arguments through evolution and human flourishing. I've given the logical syllogisms to support my argument. I've cited the sources. I've cited peer-reviewed work. I've cited the greatest philosophical minds in history that are in support of my argument. And I feel like my argument has been overwhelming tonight. And I really appreciate everyone for coming by and listening to us. I thank Tom for taking the time to come out and put forth a good challenge to me. I thank Tristan for hosting this and look forward to taking you guys' questions. Thank you so much.
Very good. I've enjoyed this debate. I think it was very, very informative, and definitely one I'm going to look back on because I think both you guys did a phenomenal job presenting your points. You guys both had strong arguments. And hey, if you guys ever want to do a round two, by all means, I would love to host it. So let's go ahead and address the question and answer portions of the debate. Those of you guys that are listening, if you want to go ahead and submit your questions, if you haven't done so already, I'm going to go ahead and just do them in order by how I receive them. So here we have A's Philosophy. Question for objective ethics. How is this statement, Pink is the greatest musical artist of all time, qualitatively different from the statement slavery is wrong? Aren't they both opinions?
They can be both opinions. So we can absolutely have a subjective opinion about anything in life. As I mentioned before, I don't know if you're here at the beginning of this, but the subjective opinion about every single person on the planet at one point was that the earth was flat. That doesn't mean the earth is not an oblique spheroid. There's no bearing on the actual truth. So subjectively, we could look at anything. So you have to look at then the context. Saying that Pink is the greatest musical artist of all time, I'm trying to think. I'm getting too old for this. Yeah, okay. I think I know who Pink is. The lady. Okay, yeah. So that's a subjective opinion, but it has no bearing on it's not any truth statement necessarily. Now, if we talked about music, that would be something we could talk about as being mathematically precise, and mathematics, is tied to reality, so on and so forth. So I've tried to connect that to slavery is wrong. Slavery is wrong because it leads to a logical saying slavery is right leads to a logical contradiction. The slave master, he values his own freedom. He inherently, by being the slave master, is showing that he values his own freedom. So if the slave master says it's right to be a slave, this is a logical contradiction because he's already showing he knows it's not right. So he might say it's right to take slaves. He might feel like it's great to be powerful and have all these people working for him, but he knows inherently, even if he's not aware of it, that he values freedom. So there's the logical contradiction. He cannot be right. It's logically impossible for him to be right about slavery.
Okay, Tom, do you want to go ahead and respond to this?
Um, I think that again, it's just revolving around a feeling.
Don't worry
He's
about
gonna say you know, slavery is wrong. Well, you can insert slavery feels wrong. And Pink is, you know, Pink is my favorite musician. Well, Pink feels like my favorite musician. So again, at the end of the day, it's just, is that your current feeling of the time? Is this a passing thing? Is it, you know, just the you know, what you want for lunch that day? What are, you know, it's just how deep of a feeling and how core of a feeling it actually is.
Gotcha. Very, very, very good. Let's go ahead and get to the next questions. And by the way, those of you guys that are in the audience, I did pin in the very beginning of this debate, I pinned Objective Ethics, his channel. He's going to be having an after show after this debate if you want to go ahead and click on that link. So I did pin that in the comment section. You guys should see that. So here we have another question by the Mirror Point at Tom Takes, excuse me. It seems that nature is informational. If this were the case, couldn't ethics be an expression through human minds that come from the patterns inherent with nature?
So well, I agree there is information in nature. I don't know if it's well, it's obviously descriptive to us, but also prescript to us on a kind of genetic level. If we're talking about, you know, something like ethics in nature, it seems as though, you know, it comes from somewhere. It's not, I don't think that it's passed on from gene to gene. I think that it is a learned behavior. I think that it's a societal behavior. It's something that makes a society function. And I don't understand how it could be any other way. So to say that I'm being kind of beamed in some moral compass from outer space in some manner, I don't even understand the concept of something like that. It's just, where is this morality coming from? Is it something that's born into you? Is it a gene? What is it? I think it's a learned behavior, and it's got us to where we are today.
Okay.
That is a great question. So absolutely, information is in fact intrinsically tied into nature, and what we're actually in is basically an information loop, right? So as we commit an action, or as nature commits an action, it puts out information that it's a feedback loop, right? That information leads to a result. That result encourages or promotes another action. It necessitates certain necessary preconditions. Those preconditions have necessary consequences. So you end up in this feedback loop. And while we do believe that we have a certain subjective influence on this, the truth of the matter is everything is actually preconditional based on the previous amount information, how that information was fed into the loop. So it just loops around, and we continue to get information fed into us, and that affects the information that comes out of us. And our actions have objectively true consequences. No matter how we feel about things, there's going to be an objectively true consequence to every action that we take, every choice that we make, which means it's that objectively true consequence that our morality drives towards. It's driven by these objective facts that have objectively true consequences. And our understanding of those consequences is attained through this information feedback loop. We see what slavery has done over thousands of years. We evolve as a society. We see the same pattern of behavior over and over again. So we recognize patterns. That's what we're designed to, or evolved to do, is to pattern recognition. We're a social species. We identify with cooperation is intrinsic to our flourishing. And so this feeds into this feedback loop. It's all objective, though. It's all driven by information. We do not drive the feedback loop. We don't drive nature. We don't drive natural processes. We simply learn to navigate within them by observing what's actually true.
All right. Looks like we have another one from A's Philosophy. This is a follow-up question for you, Objective Ethics. Can the statement Pink is the greatest musical artist of all time be described as logically true or false? So I think this was tied to his previous question, and he's doing a follow-up one.
No, because it's not a declarative proposition. So in order for it to be logically true or false, it needs to be declarative proposition. So it doesn't necessarily fall, it's not restricted to the laws of logic. I could say square circle, I could say anything I want, but it doesn't necessarily have to follow laws of logic until it's declarative, right? Or it's prescriptive, not prescriptive, but declarative. So the proposition itself, according to the laws of logic, are actually declarative propositions. So it's not about logically true. Now, if I said Pink is the greatest musical artist of all time and not the greatest musical artist of all time, now I'm making a declarative proposition that leads to a contradiction. So it cannot be true, both true and false at the same time.
Go ahead, Tom.
I'll be honest, I got nothing for this one.
Really? Okay. All right. Okay, so let's see. We have another question here. It's for you again, objective ethics. Why should human flourishing be meta-ethically desirable? What is objective about that desire?
Because it's a natural desire that's tied to evolution. So all organic life forms want to flourish. It's a natural drive. So even saying the word want or desires is really not a very good way of describing this, because it's not really a desire at all. It's what it drives. So evolutionary processes drive. So single-celled organisms, bacteria, slime mold, these things will look to eat. They will look to reproduce. They will look to thrive and flourish. They must, part of flourishing though, it deals with being fit for our environment. So as a cooperative species, we have to work together to fit within our environment. And this cooperation is ultimately the driving factor for morality, where morality's driving factor comes from. So it's not about a desire at all. It's about what actually happens objectively as a result. And it's driven by natural processes. And morality, ethics, virtue, well-being, all of these are necessary preconditions for human flourishing.
Go ahead, Tom.
So, I mean, human flourishing, it's again, we're talking about a feeling or a gradient. Like what exactly, there's nothing, you can't pinpoint to what human flourishing is. It's not quantifiable in any real manner. Again, we're talking about what feels good. It's like where are we going for lunch? It doesn't have any substance to it when we're talking, on some kind of a objective manner. What is human flourishing on when you're talking objective ethics? Well, it should be something rather trivial, because if it's objectively good, then it's good for everything all around, no matter what. So again, I really don't understand where the objectiveness, the concrete form is when you say something like human flourishing, because that to me is it's a feeling of the times, essentially. I don't know how else to look at it.
All right. Looks like we got one for you, Tom. It's from the Mirror Point. For Tom, if logic, symmetry, and coherence are objective features of the universe, why would moral coherence, the logic of right relation, be an exception?
So let me think about this for a quick second. If logic, symmetry, and coherence are objective features of the universe, why would they? So while I would agree that they appear to us as logical, objective features of the universe, I think that is our current observation of it in our very, very small slice of time that we are actually here. I think if we were here, or some civilization was here to be able to record what the universe was like at the beginning of the Big Bang, or a few million years after the Big Bang, or a billion years after the Big Bang, things would be very, very different. I don't think you would see the symmetry and the cohesiveness of the universe that we see today.
Okay. Daniel, do you want to go ahead and follow up on this one?
Yeah, I think that this is a very good observation. I agree that these are features of the objective universe. I think all the natural laws existed independent of any minds. If there was no life on this planet, it would have absolutely no bearing on any of these things mentioned. And I would include moral coherence as well. The only reason moral coherence is relative is because, as I mentioned before, morality is a process that is tied directly to humanity and human behavior. So without humans, it doesn't make any sense to talk about how high, who holds the high jump record, or who's the fastest human on the planet. None of those things are relative without humans. Morality is the same thing. Moral behaviors of humans is an irrelevant concept when there's no humans around, because it's simply tied to humanity. So these are natural laws that exist without us and with us. We do not affect them. We have no control over them whatsoever. Our subjective opinions are completely irrelevant to the veracity of any of those things, including morality, the truth claim about morality.
All right. Looks like we have another question from the uncarved block for objective ethics. Can an act be neither right nor wrong? Can an act be neither right nor wrong?
You know, this is a question. It's a great question, by the way, and I don't want to be disingenuous here. I don't know that I have the right answer to this question. It's not something I've considered. So my answer right now is going to be shooting from the hip. Okay, so there might be a better answer, and I'd have to look into this. But just off from the hip, right nor wrong, I would think there are mundane things in life. I do believe there are mundane choices that we make, but whether it's right or wrong, I honestly couldn't say if it's impossible to have to be right. It must be one or the other, because at the end of the day, everything we do is driven by an evolutionary process, and all natural laws lead towards the next evolutionary stage. And every action or inaction has an inherent consequence to it, even though we may not see what it is. So it'd be impossible for me to quantify that. I'd have to think about that. That's a great question. I really need to look into that. Thank you for that question.
I think I would quantify that with the trolley problem. And I can make it so that it's always wrong. So it's not it can be neither right or wrong because you don't have really a choice, or it can just be always wrong. So if I put a baby on one side and I put two senior citizens on the other, which way are you going to pull that trolley to take out which side? So there is no right or wrong answer for certain moral propositions. It's almost like the best of the worst choice, and that's all that you can really go by, because both options are kind of negated at that point.
Yeah, Tom, I appreciate you bringing up the trolley problem. I think that actually would be a really great way to observe that. Thank you for that insight.
All right, we got another question from the Mirror Point. Question for both: is objective facts emergent or static?
I would say they have to be emergent.
Man, I want to get involved in this discussion so bad. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
this gets us into the non-dualist, conversation here. You know, that my brother Scott, he is brilliant himself. He's a great thinker. I'm so glad to see, by the way, the people in the chat. Ace Philosophy, Mark Reed. Mark Reed is an incredibly good debater. Just so glad to see him show up. Scott, he's really smart. You guys are asking great questions. Logan, emergent or static? See, what he's trying to do right now. He's being slick. I know he is. He's trying to get me to take a side of non-dualism or dualism. And I've already told him I'm agnostic about this. So can I just pass on this question?
No, you're not allowed.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Tom. They certainly appear to be emergent to it, but at the same point in time, that really, what came first? The chicken or the egg? Is consciousness, our emergent facts coming then emergent from consciousness? Because without getting too deep into it, because we've had great conversations about this and they go for hours, but if consciousness is at the fundamental level and we think of it as data, raw data, then emergent facts ultimately would be like information, how raw data is assembled and formed and used. So it really gets into a deeper in the weeds than I can get into in this conversation.
Okay. We can go ahead and get to the next question. Looks like somebody asked me, can you ask them to comment on the Phil paper surveys of professional philosophers, which find that most philosophers are both atheists and moral realists?
I did look into a study. I am not sure if it was a Phil paper, but I actually did look into studies about this. And yes, from what I saw, and I did not do a deep dive because I'd already had too much going on, but I actually did look to see, kind of what is a majority opinion. And it ranges from around 65 to 50 some percent. So it's not a huge majority, at least the studies that I looked at. But yeah, it does seem like more philosophers and are leaning, and professionals in relative fields are leaning towards moral realism as opposed to moral relativism. So that is nice that people are. I'm in the majority side, but I will be honest and say that the studies I saw, and I don't see the Phil paper studies specifically, but the studies I saw, it's a slight majority. Like I said, even if it's 65%, that's not a huge majority.
I mean, I was using a lot of my argumentation kind of on Hume and on Nietzsche, Sartre. They all hit this kind of same nail on the head. Is that these are all kind of feelings at the end of the day. What do you think is best? What do you think is right? What do you think is wrong? It's difficult because, again, you were talking from a purely subjectivist position. Again, even these people that say that they're moral realists, I don't understand where they're getting this real moral from, because it doesn't seem to be written on any star, on any planet, on anything I know. So I don't know where. I hope it's going to sway back any other direction. Maybe it's just a trend, but we'll see.
All right, you guys. Let's see here. I did see another question. Let me go ahead and pull it up. And again, you guys that are in the comment section, if you can go ahead and ask your questions if you haven't already. I just want to make sure that I get to everyone's. I did see one from right here. Here it is, the mirror point. At both, is subjectivity an illusion like free will?
I would say objectivity is the illusion, not subjectivity.
I would say the opposite. I would say that free will is an illusion, and determinism. Everything is based on determinism. We do have what we feel are choices, but they're all deterministic. They're based on preconditions, necessary preconditions that even get us to the point to where we think we're making a choice. And subjectivity is just part of the illusion. Just like linear time, it's all an illusion. We think that things are moving in a particular direction. We think that we have influence over things, but I would say that we don't actually.
But wouldn't you say that your perception of what's going on is the subjective portion, and the quote unquote objectivity of it all is the illusion? Like that to me is the weird part. It's like your senses are telling you that certain things are happening, certain things are around you. We're having this conversation right now. But if you look at it from an objective perspective, what's actually going on right now is basically nothing. So what again, I don't see how you get the illusion being in the subjective camp when it clearly seems that the objective thing written in the sky is the illusion to me.
So I deal with that actually from the experiential asymmetric position. It's very much how I would address the problem with hard solipsism, for example. A lot of I get into this debate a lot of times with Christians trying to run tag on me. That nonsense where they say you can't
I
have
know.
any grounding for
I know
intelligibility.
very well. Yes, it
Yep,
sucks.
yep. So I just run experiential asymmetry because it deals with what you're talking about right now. Is that I can experience my pain, right? Like you're talking about, that's subjective. I can experience that, but I can't experience your pain objectively. I could observe it and I can deduce it, but I can make that connection because I know what I believe is true in my own experience. And when I deduce that you're having the same exact experience that I'm having, that now validates the experiential reality. And at the end of the day, experiential reality is exactly what Descartes was really talking about. I think, therefore I am, right? This was his justification for intelligibility. So I think the objective standard is, in fact, the empirical standard. The most important fundamental thing that separates non-theists from theists is that we are more reliant on the empirical standard and the evidence that we get from the empirical evidence around us that's objective and outside and not so subjective to our own whims, because that's what gets you into dogmatism. That's the danger of the subjective view. That's what leads you down these dark paths of being convicted of something without being convinced of something, by evidence.
Very good. I do have a question. This is the last question, as a matter of fact. Let me see here from Taurusis Necros Productions. I probably butchered that. I apologize. He says, basically, they were saying that the flood was immoral, but they said that morality is based on human action. That's what it describes. Lion not culpable, whether not culpable. How is the flood immoral? Do you guys understand this?
Yeah. So, Tom, do you want to go first, and I'll go after you?
Go ahead.
So basically, what you're talking about here is you're saying that that the actions of God, who is the one who sent the flood, according to the narrative, is a necessary process, and that means God does not actually have control over his own actions. That's the difference. So if the lion doesn't have culpability because he doesn't have control over his own actions, he has instincts only. So if you want to throw God into the lion camp where God doesn't have to have culpability, that means he doesn't have control over his own actions. He doesn't have will. He only has instincts. And that's a version of God I haven't heard before from believers, but I'd probably be more comfortable with that definition of a God. It would make a lot more sense to me that this God who's killing babies and drowning babies and commanding Saul to kill Amalekites and do all these terrible things, sacrificing his own son to die a bloody death on a cross. I mean, if it wasn't about God's will, but it was just about an instinct, a natural process, like the physics, the laws of physics that this God has to work within, I would be a lot more comfortable with that, because that would remove culpability from God in that case. But that's not the God that we read about in the Bible. So it's an interesting version of God. I'd like to have a deeper conversation about that if that's what people believe God actually is, because that changes the game.
I mean, for the most part, I would have to agree with you. Whether this idea that if God does it, it's got to be good for some inherent reason. I've heard multiple times. And when it comes to the flood narrative, I ask the question every time: could God have chosen to do it another way? Why did this omniscient, omnipotent being require this reset button? Because he was throwing a hissy fit. It clearly makes no sense. Anyone that says that their objective morals come from this subject of a being called God is just kicking the can down the road of their own subjective morality.
Very nice. We still have one more that just came in. Actually, as a matter of fact, we got a couple more. Again, you guys, go ahead and let's ask our questions, you guys, if you haven't already. I do want to respect.
Can I just throw one more thing on there? I couldn't bring up the name of it. It's called the Euthyphro's dilemma, right? Is it good because God did it, or did God do it because it's good? Yeah.
Euthyphro dilemma. Yeah.
Thank you.
I love this debate, you guys. It's on a very advanced level. There's a very small percentage of the population that even gets to this level that you guys are discussing, and I'm honored and I'm privileged to even be a part of it. Let me go ahead and get to this gentleman's question, the mirror point. Very intelligent man. I love his questions. He says, question for both: is perception of the external world subjective, world subjective? And if so, would this make the external world not real or illusionary in that sense. I don't know, you guys. To me, I'm going to become a phenomenologist after this debate. I think I don't know what else to think. These questions are just so great, and I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe the phenomenologists have something that can benefit me, because I just have more questions than I have answers, especially after this debate. But who would like to go ahead and address this one about perception of the external world, subjective or world subjective? And if so, would this make the external world not real or illusionary in that sense?
So my take on this would be that we have our senses. We know our senses are fallible. We know our senses can be tricked. So yes, our perception of the external world is definitely 100% subjective to your own experience. Now, what you do is you test this against other people, against what you consider to be reality, to see whether this is actually holding true. It doesn't negate reality itself. Reality will always be reality. You can't, that is just a fundamental grounding that I think we all agree on in order to not fall into, hard solipsism. So we have to all agree that reality is real and start from there as our grounding point, and not think that, what we're seeing, what we're sensing, what we're tasting is some kind of an illusion.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think this just ties into what I was talking about in a couple questions previously with the asymmetrical experiential asymmetry, and a little bit of kind of what Descartes was talking about with the excuse me, the cogito ergo sum. That's it does all tie back to the same conversation, but ultimately this conversation ties back to dualism versus non-dualism, right? And Descartes was a non-dualist, or I'm sorry, he has a dualist position, right? So the non-dualist position, the thing that it struggles with tackling is the limit that we have with introspection. In fact, we were having a conversation about this earlier. The subjective view is so limited because we can only look inside of ourselves so deeply. We're really restricted, right? So one of the comments I made earlier today was that when we see ourselves in other people, this is how we really are able to see inside of ourselves, because the things that I see in other people give me an ability to look within myself much more accurately than looking within my own mind, because I can be tricked by my own mind so easily. And then, like Tom was saying, we have this tangible, physical, empirical world, right? That we can compare these ideas against, that we can compare these thoughts against. And unless we think that we can predict the future, right, or that we can non-locality can affect us at this, even though we're at the macro state here, we're not at the fundamental state, right, of physics, right, quantum physics level. So the non-locality, unless we think we're actually able to manipulate that state, then we have to take things one step at a time, which means we shouldn't be able to predict the future, which means the events have to be based off of the actions, not jumping ahead and manipulating those effects by the actions, if that makes any sense.
All right. It looks like we have our last one, you guys, coming from Common Ground. Here's a question. I think it's for both. What kind of moral realism position is being defended? Relaxed? Also, can you speak to what true theory is being used to justify this?
So I'm actually coming from the theory of logic, that morality is grounded in logic, is what I base my entire argument on. I think that we can look at evolution and human flourishing as empirical evidence that supports the argument, but ultimately tonight, my argument was grounded entirely in logic.
And for myself, it was grounded in what feels good, basically, because I think that's what morality is just a strong feeling, a gut feeling that we all have at some degree. If the only time I can say that, the people don't have this feeling would be someone like a psychopath or a sociopath, where they enjoy seeing suffering in others. Whereas the normal population and normal mind, I don't think would.
All right, you guys. Well, that concludes everybody's questions. And I believe that concludes this debate. I want to thank both of you gentlemen for your insight. As I stated before, There's not many human beings that are on this advanced level, and you guys are on a very advanced level. And these questions, you guys, are very, very important, and our answers are also very important. And I just believe that both of you guys, I take my hat off to both of you guys, because I learned from this debate, and I know those in the comment section learned as well. I think that you guys, both you guys, have more in common than you have differences. That's just me. I'm talking about like the entire worldview, right? So it's like,
Yes.
you know, when you get to tease out these details, it's a joy. It really is. So I want to thank both of you gentlemen, because I was very much entertained. It's almost a 2-hour debate, and it went by pretty quickly. I know that you guys did your final closing arguments, but I don't want to, give it an argument. If you guys just want to go ahead and give, your final statements, maybe like, a minute apiece, just whatever, take your liberty, just to give your last statements on this debate.
Go ahead, Tom. I'll defer to you to go first.
You want me to pop it off here? I mean, obviously, I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight, for helping the channel, and I hope the channel does indeed grow. I'd love to be a part of it in the future. My opponent was wonderful, Daniel. Thank you. It was challenging to debate a fellow atheist on this topic, because I had to change my strategy around considerably. Since we do agree on quite a bit, it's just the little minutia of things like something like this that we can sit and have a fun conversation about. And I think that's exactly what we did. Again, I hope we can do it again sometime.
No, I would like to reiterate everything. The only clarification is I'm actually an agnostic, not an atheist. And I know that there are people kind of throw us into the same basket. And we're both skeptics, you're right. But there's a pretty significant difference of viewpoints there. I give the God proposition a 50-50 probability. I'm pretty split down the middle on that. But I definitely do have problems with some of the moral claims that theists make. I have a problem with the claim that theists say that, atheists and agnostics can't have any morality because they don't believe in God. I mean, there's a lot of issues with religion in general, but I also see a lot of beauty in religion. So I'm not an anti-theist either. As far as the debate goes, I absolutely commend Tom for being really well articulated. He studied, he knew his talking points, he knew that the arguments he wanted to come with. I think that he did a great job of trying to, rise up to the challenge. This has been a debate that's been happening for thousands of years by the greatest philosophical minds throughout history. So to be able to throw our own hats in the ring, I'm quite honored to be able to have an opponent like Tom who would challenge me. I'm really grateful to someone like Tristan, who is well studied himself. If anybody watches his channel, Tristan really knows his stuff. He's a very intelligent young man, and he, to have him being willing to host this and to support this project just speaks volumes about how important it really is. At the end of the day, if I say, oh, slavery is, subjectively wrong or objectively wrong, nobody's going to lose any sleep over it. It's not going to change the world as long as we stop slavery, right? That's really what's important. But for people who want to understand the way things work, these are the conversations that we need to have. And I really think that this was a valuable debate to have, and I'm just so honored to have been a part of it. And I thank the audience. I look forward to seeing you guys in the after debate show. If anybody's going to jump over there, has any questions, or want to flesh out some more ideas, it's just going to be open discussion. It's not going to be we're out there to bash on people or whatever. You guys could be mean to me if you want. I got a pretty thick skin, but I expect you to be respectful to everybody else involved for sure. So look forward to seeing anybody over there.
My Blue Jays are playing, so you guys have fun, and go Blue Jays.
You guys, I just posted from Daniel's permission. He sent me the link, the StreamYard link. I just posted it in the comment section, you guys. So this one that I'm holding up that I posted right here, this is the link to his after show. And so you guys are more than welcome to click on his link, and he could let you in his channel. Well, thank you both for coming on. This channel is called 21st Century Mind. So if you have a mind and you're living in the 21st century, please utilize this platform to let your voice be heard. And I want to thank both of you gentlemen for doing that. And I learned a lot. I'm going to go back and watch this debate. There was about at least 5 points that I said, you know what, I want to go back and I want to study that further. So this was very, very beneficial to me. So thank you both. And I'm looking forward to hearing from both you guys. So please reach out to me if you guys would like for me to host another debate, or if you'd like to utilize this platform. This is just as much yours as it is mine. So thank you so very much, everyone. Thank you, everyone in the comment section, for your attention and your questions. And by all means, continue to, study and, look at the academics and see if we can come to some similar conclusions and we can come to an agreement in our journey of life. And I'll go ahead and end it with that. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so very much. Tom Takes, Objective Ethics, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. It was very enjoyable, very delightful. Thank you so very much. And we are signing off in 3, 2,